History has always been shaped by men who mastered the art of power. From Caesar to Churchill, Genghis Khan to Napoleon, the world has been forged by leaders who understood the delicate balance between diplomacy and force. In our modern time, few figures embody this dual mastery more controversially and compellingly than Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. To some, he is a tyrant. To others, a nationalist hero. But beyond the headlines and heated debates, there lies a deeper truth. Putin is a master strategist. A former KGB operative turned world leader, Putin has not only restored Russia's voice on the global stage but has done so with a blend of psychological precision, geopolitical chessmanship, and battlefield calculation. This is not just a biography. It is a study in power, control, and strategic leadership. In an age where most leaders are reactive, Putin is calculating. While others play checkers, he plays multidimensional chess, often several moves ahead. From maneuvering diplomatically between enemies and allies, to launching unconventional military campaigns that redefine modern warfare, Putin has consistently shown that power is not seized, it is engineered. But who is this man? What shaped his mind? What can we learn from his victories and his mistakes? How did he rise from a poor boy in the ruins of post-war Leningrad to become one of the most formidable political figures of the 21st century? This audiobook dissects not only his life story but his strategic playbook. We explore the psychological patterns, the decisive moments, the diplomatic maneuvers, and the battlefield choices that give Vladimir Putin his edge advantage. Whether you admire or despise him, you cannot afford to ignore the leadership lessons his journey offers. Power is not about position, it's about perception and precision. And few wield it like Putin. Welcome to Putin, the strategic edge advantage of Vladimir Putin in diplomacy and battlefield, written and published by the Zillionpro. Chapter 1. Born of Steel, Putin's formative years. If strategy is the offspring of experience, then the early life of Vladimir Putin was forged in fire. To understand the mind of a modern-day tactician, we must first journey to the post-World War II ruins of Leningrad, now known as St. Petersburg, a city once battered by the longest siege in modern history. Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin was born on the 7th of October, 1952, into a world marked by hunger, silence, and a deep distrust of outsiders. The Soviet Union was still recovering from the devastating losses of the war, millions dead, infrastructure in ruins, and society tightly gripped by the iron fist of Stalinism. Putin's father, a war veteran and factory worker, had narrowly survived the conflict. His mother was a stern woman of endurance and quiet sacrifice. Together, they raised their only surviving child in a cramped communal apartment shared with multiple families. It was in this crucible of scarcity, control, and survival that Putin's personality was forged. As a child, he was small in stature, often picked on by older boys. But rather than accept weakness, he developed an unyielding determination to become stronger. He immersed himself in judo and sambo, two martial arts that emphasized not only physical dominance but mental discipline. These weren't just sports to Putin, they were strategic training grounds. In judo, he learned to use an opponent's weight and aggression against them, a principle that would later define his leadership and geopolitical maneuvers. Putin wasn't the best student at first. In fact, his early school reports were average at best. But once he set his eyes on a goal, he pursued it with near obsessive focus. That goal became clear to him as a teenager. He wanted to become a spy. The KGB, the Soviet Union's formidable intelligence agency, represented everything Putin admired: discipline, secrecy, power, and control. But getting in wasn't easy. He studied law at Leningrad State University, where he excelled under the mentorship of Anatoly Sobchak, a professor who would later become a key political figure and Putin's entry point into governance. By his mid-20s, Putin had achieved his dream. He joined the KGB, trained in counterintelligence, and was later stationed in Dresden, East Germany, during the Cold War. It was there that Putin experienced firsthand the slow unraveling of Soviet power in Europe. He watched as the Berlin Wall fell. He saw once submissive populations rise. And he learned that power not actively defended will be lost. These early experiences weren't just events. They were lessons. Lesson 1. Appear weak, but be ready to strike. Lesson 2. Use chaos as an opportunity to seize control. Lesson 3. Silence is strength. Predictability is vulnerability. Putin's childhood and early adulthood were filled with the harsh lessons of survival, both physical and ideological. But rather than be crushed by them, he learned to adapt, observe, and wait. He developed the cold patience of a predator and the silent calculation of a chess master. By the time the Soviet Union collapsed, Putin was no longer just a KGB man, he was a student of decline. He had watched an empire fall from within. And he would never allow that to happen again under his watch. In this chapter of his life, we find the blueprint of a leader who would later defy Western predictions, reassert Russian power, and become one of the most enigmatic figures of modern times. Putin was born into scarcity, raised in silence, and trained in shadows. He emerged from this background not broken, but sharpened, like steel forged in Soviet fire. Chapter 2. KGB Operative, the making of a strategic mind. The KGB was not just a state institution. It was the spinal cord of Soviet power, the hidden nerve center that regulated control, suppressed dissent, and conducted psychological warfare at home and abroad. To enter its ranks was to walk into the shadows, not for fame or fortune, but for something more intoxicating, influence. In 1975, Vladimir Putin officially joined the Komitet Gosударственной Безопасности, the Committee for State Security. It was a pivotal moment, not just in his career, but in the shaping of his mind. The KGB was where Putin learned the art of perception, disinformation, loyalty, and leverage. These were not just professional skills, they became part of his operating system. The discipline of a spy. KGB training was intense, intellectual, and psychological. Recruits were taught to read people within seconds, to blend in, to extract secrets without violence, and to anticipate moves before they happened. Putin thrived in this environment. He learned to disappear in plain sight, to watch before speaking, and to study motives behind words. Perhaps most important was the understanding that information is the ultimate weapon. A whispered rumor, a stolen document, a planted story, these could cripple empires. The Cold War wasn't fought only with missiles, but with intelligence. Putin came to understand that in any battle, military, political, or corporate, he who controls the narrative controls the field. Dresden, the school of collapse. In the 1980s, Putin was stationed in Dresden, East Germany. While the posting might have seemed quiet, it would become one of the most important chapters of his life. Dresden was a front row seat to the disintegration of Soviet influence in Europe. As the Berlin Wall fell and protesters flooded the streets, Putin experienced a strategic trauma. In one infamous incident, an angry crowd surrounded the KGB headquarters in Dresden. Putin called Soviet military backup, but none came. Moscow had gone silent. The empire was collapsing, and no one had told the men on the front lines. That moment stayed with him. Nobody lifted a finger to protect us. I realized then that the Soviet Union was no more. It was a ghost, Vladimir Putin. The fall of East Germany taught Putin a lesson he would carry into his presidency. Never again would Russia be humiliated. Never again would the leadership be so unprepared for collapse. From that day forward, Putin would craft a leadership model rooted in readiness, vigilance, and the preemptive neutralization of threats. The psychology of control. The KGB wasn't only about gathering intelligence, it was about engineering behavior. The agency perfected methods of coercion, subtle manipulation, and image control. Putin absorbed all of this. He learned that people are motivated by fear, loyalty, ambition, and ego. He learned how to weaponize information to inspire loyalty or destroy credibility. If you can control a man's secrets, you can control his loyalty. If you can control what the public believes, you can control the reality they live in. This intelligence logic became a foundation of Putin's leadership style in later years. Russian state media, political opponents, foreign allies, they would all become targets of a strategic mind trained not to lead through inspiration, but through advantage. Transitioning from the shadows to power. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, many KGB officers lost their purpose. Some disappeared. Some sold state secrets. Others joined private security firms or organized crime. But Putin chose a different path. He transitioned his espionage mindset into politics. He returned to St. Petersburg and worked under Anatoly Sobchak, the reformist mayor. There, he kept a low profile, working quietly, efficiently, strategically. Every move was calculated. Every alliance was transactional. He wasn't in a rush for power. He waited for power to come to him. By 1999, barely a decade after the fall of the USSR, Putin was handpicked by President Boris Yeltsin to become prime minister. Within months, Yeltsin would resign and Putin would assume the presidency. The former spy had become the commander-in-chief, and he would lead not like a politician, but like a KGB strategist who had just been handed the ultimate intelligence dossier, the state itself. Lessons from the shadows. From his years in the KGB, Putin's leadership acquired a few defining elements. 1. Patience is a weapon. Wait, observe, and strike only when the advantage is total. 2. Control perception. The truth is not what happened, it's what people believe happened. 3. Loyalty is non-negotiable. Infiltrate opposition. Never tolerate betrayal. 4. Use the system, then dominate it. Understand its cracks, turn them into ladders. Closing thought. From intelligence to influence, Putin's KGB years didn't just prepare him for politics, they prepared him for domination without overt warfare, diplomacy with an edge, and statecraft that feels more like spycraft. He didn't just learn how to serve the state, he learned how to become the state. From this point on, Putin's rule would blend diplomacy, manipulation, force, and narrative into a single weapon. And the world would soon witness a new kind of leader, one who never blinks, never breaks character, and never forgets a slight. Chapter 3. Rise to Power, The Silent Climb. History rarely announces its next great leader. It often emerges quietly, in the shadows, unnoticed by the crowd until it is too late to ignore. Vladimir Putin's rise to the highest office in Russia was not marked by mass popularity, dramatic speeches, or media stunts. It was the quiet orchestration of power, built on relationships, loyalty, and timing, hallmarks of a strategist who never reveals his next move until it is already made. The bureaucrat in the back room. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, Russia in the 1990s was in a state of chaos. Political corruption, economic disaster, and social breakdown plagued the nation. Many former KGB agents were adrift in a system that no longer valued their skills. But Putin, true to his nature, adapted. He returned to St. Petersburg and became part of the inner circle of Anatoly Sobchak, the reformist mayor. Though Putin served in a technical capacity, as head of external relations, he operated with the precision of an intelligence operative. He built networks, brokered deals, and learned the ropes of local and federal power without drawing attention. Even in politics, Putin remained the observer, never pushing himself forward publicly, but always being indispensable behind the scenes. Those who worked with him described him as loyal, discreet, fiercely efficient, and immune to the temptations of fame. He wasn't interested in the spotlight, he was interested in leverage. Moscow calling. In 1996, Sobchak lost his re-election bid. Many of his allies scattered. But Putin was quickly absorbed into the federal government machine in Moscow. He became deputy chief of the Presidential Property Management Department, a position of seemingly low importance, but one with strategic access to critical information and assets. By 1998, he was appointed head of the Federal Security Service, FSB, the successor to the KGB. It was a powerful return to his roots. From this position, Putin began gathering influence. He cleaned house quietly, restored discipline, and aligned powerful figures in the security apparatus to his orbit. It was during this time that President Boris Yeltsin, aging, erratic, and increasingly unpopular, was looking for a successor. He needed someone loyal, capable, and not part of the political elite. He needed someone who would not betray him or prosecute his inner circle once out of office. Putin was the perfect candidate. The prime minister nobody knew. In August 1999, Yeltsin appointed Vladimir Putin as prime minister. Most Russians had never heard of him. The political class was stunned. The media dismissed him as another disposable bureaucrat. Yet behind the scenes, the chessboard was already shifting. Just 1 month into his role, a series of apartment bombings rocked Russia, killing hundreds. The attacks were blamed on Chechen separatists. The country was on edge. Putin responded with iron resolve, launching a fierce military campaign into Chechnya. His calm, stern demeanor in crisis won over the public. His message was clear: we will hunt them down everywhere. If they're in the toilet, we'll blast them in the outhouse. That phrase, though crude, became symbolic of a new, unflinching leadership style. Russia had grown tired of chaos and weakness. Putin projected the image of order, strength, and decisiveness. His popularity surged. The transition of power. On the 31st of December, 1999, Boris Yeltsin unexpectedly resigned. In a televised address, he announced, "I've made a decision. I understood I must do it. Russia must enter the new millennium with new politicians, with new faces, with new, intelligent, strong, and energetic people. Today, I resign." Yeltsin appointed Putin as acting president. The transition was swift, smooth, and strategically brilliant. There were no protests, no power struggles, no questions. Russia had a new leader, and most of the world hadn't seen it coming. Within 3 months, Putin won the presidential election. The former KGB agent, who once operated in silence and shadows, had now become the supreme leader of the Russian Federation. Lessons in power climbing. Putin's rise to power was not explosive, it was methodical, precise, and deeply strategic. From a KGB officer to president in less than a decade, his journey offers profound lessons for anyone navigating complex systems of power. 1. Loyalty is currency. Putin earned the trust of powerful men by being discreet and dependable. 2. Know the timing. He never rushed, he positioned himself and waited for the opportunity to come. 3. Crisis is leverage. The Chechen war gave Putin a platform to appear strong while others hesitated. 4. Never underestimate quiet ambition. Those who appear least threatening often climb the highest. The making of a new Russia. With Putin at the helm, the age of post-Soviet instability was over. A new era was beginning, one defined by centralized control, strategic diplomacy, military reorganization, and the restoration of Russian pride on the global stage. But while the rise had been quiet, the reign would not be. Putin was now in power, not as a manager of chaos, but as a builder of an empire. Chapter 4. The Diplomacy of Dominance, Rewriting the Rules of Global Power. Diplomacy is often imagined as delicate, full of handshakes, smiles, and compromise. But for Vladimir Putin, diplomacy is war by other means, a chess game played with steel nerves and ice-cold calculation. Where others sought consensus, he sought leverage. Where others offered partnerships, he offered terms. Putin did not enter the global stage to be accepted. He came to redefine the game. From isolation to influence. When Putin assumed the presidency in 2000, Russia was marginalized on the world stage. The West no longer feared it. NATO was expanding eastward. Former Soviet republics were seeking Western alliances. The Russian economy was frail, and the Kremlin was seen as corrupt and fractured. But Putin saw a different future, one where Russia would not ask for a seat at the table but would flip the table entirely if needed. His foreign policy from the start aimed at 1. Restoring Russia's prestige. 2. Redefining post-Cold War power dynamics. 3. challenging US global hegemony 4. Using economic and military tools as diplomatic weapons. The doctrine of controlled aggression. Putin's approach to diplomacy is a calculated blend of cooperation, confrontation, and coercion. He understands that nations, like people, respond to strength and predict weakness. He has made a career of making unpredictable moves that force other powers to respond, putting them on the defensive. This doctrine is characterized by strategic ambiguity, never revealing intentions clearly. Hybrid diplomacy, using energy, information, military posture, and cyber influence in tandem. Tactical disruptions, intervening just enough to shift outcomes without full-scale war. Bilateral power plays, avoiding multilateral dependence, focusing on one-on-one leverage. Energy diplomacy, the power beneath the surface. Russia's massive reserves of oil and natural gas are not just economic assets, they are diplomatic weapons. Under Putin, the country became a key energy supplier to much of Europe. This dependency gave him invisible strings of control. When nations criticized Russian domestic or foreign policies, gas pipelines were slowed, contracts renegotiated, and prices increased. Why invade when you can control a country's winter? This energy diplomacy turned Gazprom and other state-run enterprises into geopolitical tools. Countries that opposed Russia often found themselves negotiating with cold offices and colder pipelines. Spheres of influence, reasserting control in the former USSR. Putin has long viewed the collapse of the Soviet Union as a catastrophic geopolitical disaster. Not because of communism, but because it fractured Russia's sphere of influence and allowed NATO to encroach. His foreign policy has since focused on rebuilding Russian dominance over Ukraine, Belarus, Georgia, Kazakhstan and Central Asia. In each region, Putin applied different tools: hard power, military force in Georgia, 2008, and Ukraine, Crimea, 2014. Soft power, Russian media, cultural identity, and Orthodox Church diplomacy. Economic incentives and threats, loans, trade deals, sanctions, and embargoes. Political engineering, backing favorable regimes and destabilizing adversarial ones. To Putin, diplomacy isn't just about negotiating borders, it's about reasserting control over lost dominions. The West, from Cold Handshake to Cold War revival. Putin's early presidency was marked by attempts at cooperation with the West. He even offered Russian support during the US invasion of Afghanistan post 9/11. But he quickly realized that Washington's global dominance left little room for equal partnership. The NATO expansion, US missile defense systems in Eastern Europe, and support for color revolutions were seen by Moscow not as benign policies, but as encroachments. In response, Putin's strategy shifted, undermining Western unity, supporting Eurosceptic parties, leveraging Brexit dynamics, and exploiting EU fractures. Cyber warfare and information control, alleged interference in foreign elections, disinformation campaigns, and the use of RT and Sputnik as propaganda arms. Military positioning, reviving the Russian military presence in Syria, 2015, was a masterstroke. It not only preserved an ally in Assad but also gave Putin global strategic leverage and showcased Russian power projection. While Western leaders changed with elections, Putin's continuity allowed him to outlast, outthink, and outmaneuver. Diplomacy of fear and respect. The West called him a dictator. The media branded him a villain. But world leaders continued to take his calls, attend his forums, and negotiate on his terms. Why? Because Putin doesn't seek popularity, he seeks predictable dominance. His diplomatic power is not based on how much he is liked, but how much he is feared and respected. He's understood something most democratic leaders overlook. In the brutal arena of geopolitics, soft words are lost, but power echoes. Lessons in power diplomacy. Putin's diplomatic strategy can be distilled into strategic lessons that apply far beyond government. 1. Never play a game by someone else's rules. Rewrite the rules or play a different game. 2. Use every resource as a tool of influence, money, media, energy, or fear. 3. Bend the world to your pace. Be unpredictable, but always purposeful. 4. Make others need you before they can oppose you. 5. Master silence. A quiet posture before a bold move magnifies impact. Closing thought, the world according to Putin. Vladimir Putin has reshaped diplomacy from a table of mutual benefit into a stage of strategic dominance. He is not playing for applause, he is playing for advantage. He doesn't believe in permanent allies or enemies, only in permanent interests. His worldview is simple: a strong nation leads, a weak nation pleads. Chapter 5. The Battlefield Chessmaster, War by Design, Not Emotion. In the theater of war, many leaders respond with passion, revenge, or patriotism. Vladimir Putin responds with calculation. Where others see battlefields of blood and steel, he sees a chessboard, with pieces to be maneuvered, ruthlessly, patiently, and always toward a long-range goal. Putin is not a general by uniform or profession, but a military strategist in mindset and doctrine. His battlefield tactics are not isolated incidents, they are reflections of an overarching vision: asymmetrical dominance, hybrid warfare, psychological control, and the unrelenting pursuit of national interest. The foundation of military thought. From his time in the KGB, Putin understood one fundamental principle: the line between war and peace is never clear. Victory does not always mean occupation. Defeat does not always mean retreat. And war is not always fought with tanks. His military worldview is built on these foundational doctrines. 1. Flexibility over formality. 2. Speed over size. 3. Influence over invasion. 4. Victory through perception as much as position. Under his leadership, Russia has redefined what it means to go to war, and what it means to win. The Georgian conflict, testing the doctrine. In 2008, Russia invaded Georgia after escalating tensions in the breakaway regions of South Ossetia and Abkhazia. The world was caught off guard by the speed and efficiency of the Russian response. The operation lasted just 5 days. Georgian military forces were overwhelmed. Russia achieved its goals with minimal international consequence. Putin demonstrated a key lesson: short, sharp conflicts that achieve clear objectives are more effective than drawn-out wars of attrition. More importantly, the West learned something uncomfortable: Russia was willing to use military force to redraw borders in the 21st century. And it was willing to take the diplomatic fallout. This conflict was the opening move of a larger strategy, proving that power, not protocol, rules the world. Crimea and Ukraine, the hybrid war revolution. In 2014, Putin played what many military analysts called a masterstroke of 21st century warfare: the annexation of Crimea. There were no tanks rolling through the streets initially. Instead, unmarked troops, little green men, appeared overnight. Local pro-Russian sentiment was fanned through media and cultural narratives. A referendum, widely disputed, declared Crimea's desire to join Russia. The West responded with sanctions, but not force. Putin took a peninsula without a conventional war. He showed that a modern military campaign could be won through psychological operations, information warfare, cyber manipulation, cultural infiltration, swift tactical positioning. This was the dawn of hybrid warfare, a concept now studied in military academies worldwide, yet mastered by the Kremlin years earlier. Syria, global reach and strategic presence. In 2015, Putin entered a new battlefield far from his borders: Syria. The Assad regime was faltering. The US had drawn red lines and failed to enforce them. ISIS and rebel forces were destabilizing the region. Into this chaos stepped Putin, sending air power, advisors, and logistical support. But it wasn't just about Syria. Russia's intervention accomplished, preserving an ally and securing a Mediterranean naval base. Demonstrating military effectiveness to the world. Challenging US influence in the Middle East. Showcasing new weapons systems. Reasserting Russia as a global power. The message was clear: Russia doesn't just fight regional wars, it influences global battlefields. Cyber warfare and shadow operations. Putin's understanding of warfare extends beyond geography and missiles. He recognizes that in the 21st century, conflict is also digital. Cyber warfare became an extension of Russia's strategic toolkit, targeting power grids, banks, and government institutions. Interfering with elections through information warfare. Deploying troll farms and disinformation networks. Using hackers as unofficial state actors. These tools allow Russia to strike without a return address, causing disruption without sparking conventional war. Putin has built an ecosystem where war can be fought without soldiers, yet have global impact. Military modernization under Putin. When Putin first came to power, the Russian military was underfunded, outdated, and demoralized. 2 decades later, it had undergone a transformation, investment in next-generation weaponry, hypersonics, nuclear submarines, air defense systems, streamlined command structures, enhanced special operations forces, real-world training via active conflicts. Rather than chase Western models, Putin shaped a uniquely Russian doctrine, agile, unpredictable, and ruthless. Psychology of the commander. What truly makes Putin a battlefield chessmaster is not merely his strategy, it's his psychology. He escalates unpredictably, forcing opponents to recalculate risk. He gambles boldly when the West is indecisive. He never reveals his limits, so no one knows how far he will go. He uses fear as a weapon, not only on the battlefield, but in diplomatic rooms. Where others see war as a last resort, Putin sees it as a continuum of political strategy. Lessons in tactical and strategic warfare. For leaders, entrepreneurs, and thinkers, Putin's military doctrine offers unsettling, yet powerful lessons. 1. Never fight the enemy where they are strong. Attack the soft flanks, information, economy, morale. 2. A battle won without fighting is the highest form of victory. 3. The element of surprise is more powerful than the size of an army. 4. Wars are not just won in trenches, they are won in minds, media, and code. 5. Sometimes, appearing irrational is a strategy. Uncertainty paralyzes your opponents. Closing thought, the Grandmaster in combat. Putin doesn't seek war for glory. He wages war to shift the balance of power. Every military move is nested within a broader vision, restoring Russia's place as a global force, unsettling the dominance of the West, and projecting strength wherever it is needed. To him, the battlefield is a chessboard, and he is not just playing pieces, he is rewriting the game. Chapter 6. Power and Persona, the Cult of Putin. Power is not only exercised through tanks, treaties, or television screens, it is radiated through persona. In Vladimir Putin's Russia, the man is the brand, and the brand is the nation. Over 2 decades, Putin has built something beyond presidency. He has engineered a cult of personality, a modern-day czarist aura infused with nationalist pride, stoic masculinity, and strategic mystique. His leadership transcends office, it exists in the psyche of the people, in the image of strength he portrays, and in the mythology that envelops his name. This is the cult of Putin, crafted deliberately, projected globally, and internalized deeply within the Russian consciousness. The persona architecture, machismo meets mystique. From the earliest days of his rule, Putin understood that images speak louder than policies, especially in an age of media manipulation. He began constructing a public image that combined strength, simplicity, and stoic resolve. Media campaigns began showcasing Putin riding horses shirtless through the Siberian wilderness. Putin wrestling bears in public imagination, if not in reality. Putin scuba diving ancient relics. Putin flying jets, shooting weapons, practicing judo. These images were not just stunts, they were rituals of power, psychological reinforcements of authority. They painted Putin as more than a politician, as a modern-day warrior king, virile, fearless, and unchallenged. Where Western leaders were bound by protocol, Putin was the lone wolf, the man of the people and the punisher of enemies. Narratives of national destiny. Putin did not build his cult alone, it was woven with a narrative. Russia had been humiliated after the fall of the Soviet Union, and Putin was the man to resurrect her greatness. He positioned himself as the restorer of lost pride, the defender against Western decadence, the only man strong enough to hold the empire together. Through speeches, state-sponsored documentaries, and cultural symbols, Putin became a historical figure in real time, tied to the legacy of great Russian leaders, Peter the Great, Catherine the Great, and even Stalin, without adopting their tyrannies openly. This sense of historical inevitability turned Putin from a politician into a symbol of national survival. Control of media, the echo chamber of greatness. No cult of personality can thrive without media obedience, and in Russia, the state has turned media into a mirror that reflects only Putin's light. Major television networks air glowing reports of his activities. State-funded documentaries frame him as a geopolitical genius. News coverage crafts enemies abroad and glory at home. Even critics are woven into the mythology. They become either enemies of the state or tools of the West, thus reinforcing Putin's heroism as a leader under siege. Criticism, when acknowledged, becomes evidence of persecution, and persecution feeds the cult. The people's strong man. Putin's appeal is not merely imposed, it resonates deeply with segments of the Russian populace. To many ordinary Russians, he represents stability after chaos, contrast to the wild 1990s. He is the protector of sovereignty, especially from Western dominance. He is tough on corruption, even if selectively. He exudes confidence in a way Russians associate with historical greatness. Even his cold demeanor and emotionless delivery project a kind of leadership rare in the modern world, commanding, focused, and enduring. He has become, in many ways, the father figure of the nation, not warm, but necessary. Authoritarian aura and democratic garb. Putin has maintained the outer structure of democracy while centralizing power like a monarch. Elections are held, but outcomes are predictable. Opponents are allowed, but marginalized or eliminated. Institutions exist, but are hollowed and loyal. This dualism allows Putin to claim democratic legitimacy, wield autocratic control, project strength to the people and civility to the West. He becomes untouchable, both feared and revered, elected yet enthroned. Putin the global icon. Beyond Russia, Putin's cult has found admirers in unusual places. To some international observers and leaders, he is a symbol of defiance against Western globalism. He is a champion of tradition, order, and national pride. He is a master strategist who outplays the West. Strongmen from various countries cite Putin's leadership style. Populist leaders praise his uncompromising style. Even critics grudgingly admit his tactical brilliance. Whether loved or loathed, he commands attention, and that is power in itself. The psychological matrix, why the cult works. The cult of Putin is not accidental, it is psychologically engineered. 1. Repetition and symbolism reinforce his role as protector and savior. 2. Controlled threats, foreign and internal, manufacture constant crisis, requiring a strong hand. 3. Mystery and distance prevent overexposure, sustaining the aura. 4. Selective mercy and cruelty create unpredictability, feeding both fear and loyalty. He embodies Carl Jung's archetype of the ruler, not as a servant of the people, but as a manifestation of national will. Lessons from the cult of personality. While authoritarianism has its critics, the lessons from Putin's cult of personality apply in business, leadership, and personal branding. Control the narrative, or it will control you. Symbolism often outlasts speech. A leader's image must align with people's emotional needs. Fear, respect, and admiration can be blended into influence. Consistency in image is more powerful than versatility. Putin's rise shows that leadership is not just about what you do, it's about what people believe you represent. Closing thought, man, myth, mechanism. Putin is not merely a man, he is a crafted persona, a living embodiment of a national myth. and a strategic mirror reflecting Russia's yearning for strength, sovereignty, and significance. In shaping his cult, he has redefined leadership for the 21st century, not through democratic ideals or moral inspiration, but through control, charisma, and carefully curated fear. Chapter 7. Enemies, Allies, and the Art of Balance. The true genius of Vladimir Putin does not lie solely in his dominance of the Russian political theater or his bold maneuvers on the global stage. It lies in his extraordinary ability to balance competing forces. Like a grandmaster at chess, Putin has consistently played friend and foe against each other, managing allies with caution and enemies with calculation. His enduring rule is a product of his keen sense of timing, leverage, loyalty, betrayal, and calibrated aggression. Identifying and managing enemies, cold strategy, not hot emotion. Putin does not confront all enemies directly. He does not destroy unless necessary. He observes, calculates, and strikes only when the target is isolated or weak. Types of enemies in Putin's strategy. Domestic political opponents, managed through arrests, discrediting campaigns, or exile. For example, Alexei Navalny. Oligarchs and economic powerhouses, either tamed through state leverage or turned into loyalists via shared spoils. Western adversaries, framed as external threats used to galvanize nationalism. Internal bureaucratic saboteurs, quietly removed or reassigned, often under anti-corruption banners. He doesn't just eliminate threats, he publicly demonstrates their fall to reinforce his strength. But more importantly, he often converts enemies into dependent allies, crafting a system where survival depends on loyalty. Selective alliances, loyalty is rented, not bought. Putin's allies are chosen not just for skill or ideology, but for utility and loyalty. He surrounds himself with individuals who owe their rise to him, have vested interests in the status quo, pose no independent political threat. His inner circle, Siloviki, former security military officials, trusted businessmen, and lifelong friends, form a circle of mutual dependency. They are protected and empowered as long as they serve the Kremlin's objectives. In foreign policy, Putin has demonstrated strategic pragmatism. Turkey's Erdogan, a NATO leader turned semi-ally through gas deals and military coordination. China's Xi Jinping, a powerful partner in balancing against US hegemony, yet carefully watched to avoid dependency. Iran and Syria, tactical alliances shaped by regional military interests and mutual resistance to the West. These relationships are transactional, not emotional, bound by shared goals, not shared ideologies. Divide and rule, playing factions against each other. One of Putin's enduring strategies is the deliberate nurturing of rivalry among factions within the government and elite structures, intelligence agencies, FSB versus GRU, military versus internal security, business versus bureaucracy. By keeping power centers fragmented, Putin ensures that no one group becomes strong enough to challenge him. This method echoes the ancient Roman maxim, divide et impera, divide and conquer. It also allows Putin to play the role of ultimate arbiter, the one who settles disputes, punishes excesses, and rewards restraint. Information warfare, making truth a moving target. Enemies are not always counted with bullets, they are undermined through information control. Under Putin, truth becomes fluid, shaped to fit the Kremlin's purpose. Dissenting voices are painted as foreign puppets. Failures are blamed on sanctions or sabotage. Victories are magnified, defeats are reframed. By manipulating information, Putin maintains psychological balance, shaping perceptions, not just policies. This makes it difficult for enemies to unite, as the narrative constantly shifts, disorienting those who oppose him while reassuring his supporters. Loyalty through fear and favor. Putin maintains power through a mix of rewards and punishments, a time-tested strategy seen in ancient empires and modern mafia networks alike. Rewards, access to state contracts, protection from prosecution, political appointments and honors. Punishments, public humiliation or legal persecution. Economic ruin via frozen assets or revoked licenses. In extreme cases, mysterious deaths or disappearances. The message is simple: to be close to power is to thrive, to oppose power is to be destroyed. This binary keeps both allies and enemies guessing, never fully secure, always needing the system. The Western game, neither friend nor foe, a strategic rival. Putin's relationship with the West is the clearest expression of balance and strategic ambiguity. He does not seek outright war with NATO or the US, that would be ruinous, but he also refuses to submit to their terms. Instead, he plays the gray zone tactics, cyber warfare, disinformation campaigns, political interference, energy leverage. These tools keep the West off balance, confused about his true intentions and unsure of how to respond. This uncertainty is a tool of control, a form of soft warfare that gains ground without gunfire. Lessons in leadership balance. Putin's mastery of enemies and allies offers lessons beyond politics and warfare. In leadership, whether in business, governance, or personal networks, the art of balance is everything. Key takeaways: power is not about destruction, but calibration. Allies must be managed as carefully as enemies. Loyalty is transactional, never assume it's permanent. Balance opposing interests to maintain central authority. Let no one feel entirely secure, nor entirely expendable. This is not moral leadership, it is strategic leadership, rooted in realism, survival, and long-term planning. Closing thought: the tightrope walker of power. Putin's enduring rule is not simply a product of force or propaganda. It is a delicate, disciplined walk on the tightrope of power, balancing ambition and caution, friends and foes, strength and subtlety. He is not reckless. He is not overconfident. He calculates, then waits, then strikes, then retreats, then re-engages. Always adjusting, always evolving. Chapter 8. Crisis Manager. Lessons in Pressure Leadership. History does not remember leaders who ruled in comfort, it remembers those who rose in crisis. For over 2 decades, Vladimir Putin has led Russia through a series of internal and external crises that would have shattered the careers of less resolute men. From hostage crises to economic collapses, foreign interventions to global sanctions, Putin has consistently turned moments of pressure into opportunities for consolidation, elevation, and strategic pivoting. Let's unpack the anatomy of Putin's crisis leadership, how he absorbs pressure, exerts control, recalibrates strategy, and emerges stronger. More than just survival, his approach to crisis is about leveraging adversity to enhance power. The rise of a leader in chaos. Putin's entire rise is rooted in crisis. In 1999, Russia was teetering. The economy was shattered by inflation. The war in Chechnya had reignited. The public had lost trust in government. And then, a series of deadly apartment bombings plunged the nation into fear. Putin, then a relatively unknown former KGB officer and prime minister, took a hardline stance. We will hunt down the terrorists everywhere, even in the toilet. It was a bold statement of resolve that galvanized national support. He used the crisis not only to launch a military operation in Chechnya but also to position himself as the strongman Russia needed. When President Yeltsin suddenly resigned on New Year's Eve 1999, Putin was ready. Crisis did not frighten him. It legitimized him. Swift centralization of command. In every major crisis, Putin's first move is the same: centralized decision-making. This instinct goes beyond power hunger. It reflects his belief that too many voices create confusion, especially when the stakes are high. During the Beslan school siege, 2004, he took full national control of the response, and post-crisis, reduced the autonomy of regional governors. The Kursk submarine disaster, 2000, despite criticism for delay, he used the incident to begin reform and recentralization of military oversight. The COVID-19 pandemic, while letting governors implement local rules, he still maintained strategic control of the national narrative and relief initiatives. This model, single command in chaos, reflects military thinking, clear chain of command, rapid decision making, total control. Messaging under pressure. Control the narrative. In crisis, the battle is not just on the field, it's in the mind. Putin understands this deeply. He doesn't let panic spiral. Instead, he controls the national narrative, even if it means manufacturing one. Techniques include delaying public statements until full strategic messaging is ready. Framing crises as attacks from foreign enemies to redirect blame. Heroification of state actions, showcasing Russia as resilient under siege. Using crisis to rally patriotism, reinforcing national unity through adversity. Example, in the 2014 Crimea annexation, despite global backlash, he framed it as reunification and used the event to reignite nationalist fervor amid Western sanctions. In pressure moments, Putin led not just with policy, but with narrative power. Decisiveness over popularity. Crisis leadership often demands unpopular decisions. Putin rarely hesitates. Whether it's crushing protests, enforcing emergency military measures, or leveraging draconian surveillance during national emergencies, he leans into function over favor. The long-term stability of the state, in his eyes, justifies short-term public discomfort. To Putin, hesitation signals weakness. It emboldens enemies and confuses allies. This means, he sacrifices popularity for perception of strength. He measures success not by approval ratings, but by control retention. He tolerates criticism if it serves the image of invincibility. Crisis as a cover for strategic moves. Putin often uses crisis not just to respond, but to advance unrelated strategic goals. During global focus on Syria, he quietly restructured military leadership and expanded arms deals with non-Western states. In the fog of COVID-19, constitutional changes were passed allowing him to potentially stay in power until 2036. During oil crises, he renegotiated critical energy agreements under duress, repositioning Russia's global leverage. These moves are calculated, opportunistic, and bold. Traits of a leader who sees chaos as camouflage for transformation. Emotional detachment, the stoic commander. Putin rarely shows emotional distress during crises. While this has drawn criticism for seeming cold or indifferent, it is a key element of his pressure leadership. He embodies the stoic commander archetype, calm in appearance, calculating in reaction, reserved in speech, focused on endurance, not appeasement. To the Russian psyche, long conditioned by hardship, this calm is reassuring. It reinforces the narrative that Putin will take care of it, a message critical to his political longevity. Lessons in pressure leadership. Putin's crisis leadership, while controversial and autocratic, contains profound lessons for leaders in business, politics, or personal life. Don't wait, act decisively and centralize control when stakes are high. Own the narrative. If you don't, someone else will. See crisis as an opportunity to restructure, reset, and rise. Stay emotionally detached, lead with vision, not reaction. Leverage confusion to make bold moves others would challenge in calm times. Always come out of crisis with more control than before. In Putin's world, crisis is not an interruption of leadership, it is the forge in which leadership is tested and elevated. Closing thought, crisis is the crucible of command. Putin does not fear pressure, he performs under it. Each crisis becomes a chapter of reinvention, a canvas on which he redraws the lines of power, structure, and influence. His ability to survive, and often thrive, under pressure has turned him from a transitional figure into a defining global actor of the 21st century. The West may critique his methods, but none can deny his mastery of high-stakes leadership. Chapter 9. Putin's Playbook 12 Laws of Strategic Dominance. Vladimir Putin's reign is no accident of history. His long-standing grip on power, geopolitical maneuvering, and battlefield cunning point to a consistent philosophy of control, an unwritten but deeply practiced set of laws that govern his approach to leadership, diplomacy, and dominance. Let's distill those unwritten codes into the 12 Laws of Strategic Dominance, a powerful playbook extracted from Putin's life, decisions, and legacy. Whether you are a student of politics, a business strategist, or a leader in any high-stakes field, these laws serve as a toolkit for navigating complexity, asserting influence, and staying ahead of the game. Law number 1. Perception is power. Control the optics. Putin understands that power often lies not in what is, but in what appears to be. From bare-chested photo ops to choreographed speeches, he crafts an image of invincibility. Rule: shape how you are seen before shaping what you do. Application: always manage optics before action. Appear strong, even in moments of uncertainty. Law number 2. Centralize, then delegate strategically. Putin centralizes critical decisions but delegates tactical operations. This ensures both control and flexibility. Rule: hold the reins of vision, but let trusted generals execute the war. Application: never be involved in every detail, but never lose sight of the mission's core. Law number 3. Keep opponents guessing. Predictability is vulnerability. He thrives in ambiguity. From hybrid warfare to shifting alliances, Putin makes unpredictability a strategic weapon. Rule: confuse the enemy, clarity gives them a map. Application: master the art of strategic ambiguity. Be readable only when you want to be. Law number 4. Crisis is a ladder. Exploit every emergency. From Chechnya to Crimea to COVID-19, every crisis in Putin's career has led to a consolidation of power. Rule: in chaos, there is opportunity. Application: train yourself to act boldly when others freeze. Crisis can be a disguised blessing. Law number 5. Divide and rule. Fragment the opposition. Whether it's the domestic political sphere or NATO alliances, Putin's strategy is to sow division among enemies. Rule: a divided enemy cannot resist. Application: identify fault lines. Exploit differences. Keep adversaries disorganized. Law number 6. Weaponize loyalty. Build a cult, not just a cabinet. Putin doesn't just appoint administrators, he breeds loyalists. From the Siloviki to oligarchs, they owe him everything. Rule: create dependence. Loyalty built on mutual survival is stronger than admiration. Application: don't just attract talent. Create a circle whose survival depends on your rise. Law number 7. Own the narrative. Tell the story first. Be it in war or diplomacy, Putin frames every move with a narrative that justifies and glorifies it. Rule: people don't follow truth, they follow stories. Application: craft your narrative early. Control the context before others do. Law number 8. Strategic patience. Wait for the moment, then strike. Putin plays the long game. He waited years before striking in Ukraine or redrawing energy dependencies. Rule: delay is not weakness, it is preparation. Application: learn to wait. Move only when the conditions favor maximum impact. Law number 9. Use law as a sword. Legalize power moves. From constitutional amendments to weaponizing anti-NGO laws, Putin often uses legal instruments to justify controversial power plays. Rule: turn law into a tool of dominance. Application: cloak bold moves in legality. Make the system work for your ambitions. Law number 10. Mirror the enemy. Use their tactics against them. He mimics Western playbooks, media control, think tanks, private armies, but adapts them with a Russian twist. Rule: to beat the system, understand it from within. Application: don't reinvent. Reverse engineer what works, and use it with an edge. Law number 11. Emotional discipline. Never react publicly. In the face of sanctions, criticism, or military pressure, Putin's public demeanor remains unreadable. Rule: emotion clouds judgment. Control your inner theater. Application: let your actions speak. Reaction is a luxury, control is a necessity. Law number 12. Outlive the competition. Longevity is power. While world leaders come and go, Putin stays. Longevity in power is itself a form of dominance. It outlasts enemies, resets policies, and establishes historical narrative. Rule: in long games, even small wins accumulate. Application: build for the long haul. Resilience is the crown of rulers. The strategic edge takeaway: Putin's dominance is not built on randomness, it is sculpted through repetition of these laws across different scenarios. His mastery lies in strategic convergence, aligning military tactics, diplomatic theater, psychological warfare, and domestic politics under one playbook. Whether you agree or disagree with his methods, the clarity of strategy is undeniable. Power respects strategy, and strategy respects law. Closing thought: the leader as grandmaster. Like a grandmaster in chess, Putin anticipates moves far ahead, waits with icy patience, and strikes with precision. The 12 laws are not just rules of leadership, they are chess pieces on the board of global power. In the final chapter, we draw practical lessons from Putin's life and tactics, unveiling how his strategies can be applied, ethically or otherwise, by leaders navigating today's volatile world. Chapter 10. The Putin Code, Leadership Lessons for the 21st Century Strategist. As the curtains close on the detailed account of Vladimir Putin's rise and reign, one truth becomes abundantly clear: whether loved or loathed, admired or feared, Putin represents a unique archetype of modern leadership. His style blends authoritarian grit with strategic brilliance, yielding a formula that continues to shape geopolitics. This chapter is about translating Putin's methods into lessons. Not for domination, but for mastery of leadership, decision-making, and long-term positioning. We distill what we call the Putin Code, a series of guiding principles for the 21st century strategist, entrepreneur, leader, or thinker who must navigate chaos with clarity. 1. Lead with purpose, not popularity. Putin rarely pursues approval. Instead, he focuses on control, stability, and long-term goals. He defines his own metrics of success. Lesson: don't get trapped in the popularity contest. Lead with clarity of mission, even when misunderstood. The right outcomes often precede the applause too. Always think in systems. Putin doesn't view events in isolation. He sees systems, power structures, intelligence loops, geopolitical networks, and plays within them. Lesson: don't just solve problems. Understand the ecosystem. True leaders think like system architects, not firefighters. 3. Study your opponents, not just yourself. Putin is a master of psychological analysis. He reads people, nations, and alliances with clinical detachment. Lesson: know your rivals better than they know themselves. In business or politics, winning is often a result of strategic empathy. 4. Control the narrative or be controlled by it. In Putin's world, media is not just information, it is ammunition. He learned early that stories shape reality. Lesson: in a noisy world, the one who tells the clearest story commands attention. Be the author, not just a character. 5. Cultivate inner circles, but stay above them. Putin builds powerful alliances but always maintains emotional distance. Loyalty is earned through dependence, not emotional bonds. Lesson: build networks, but don't become hostage to them. Be close, but not vulnerable. 6. Adapt ruthlessly to shifting conditions. From the collapse of the USSR to Western sanctions, Putin has repeatedly evolved, economically, diplomatically, militarily. Lesson: your greatest strength is adaptability. When the terrain changes, the rigid fall, the flexible thrive. 7. Master patience, time is your strongest ally. Putin has waited years for the right moments, whether in war or diplomacy. His timing is rarely rushed. Lesson: play the long game. Learn to wait. Train yourself to resist premature action until the advantage is yours. 8. Turn weakness into strategy. Russia's economic limits, geographic vulnerabilities, or diplomatic pressures have often become tools in Putin's hands, used to provoke overreach by rivals or galvanize nationalism at home. Lesson: every weakness contains a hidden strength. Find it. Use it. 9. Never waste a crisis. To Putin, Every national emergency is also a political opportunity, a chance to reinforce his power or justify new policies. Lesson. Crisis is the forge of leadership. Don't fear the fire, shape yourself in it. 10. Create legacy, not just victory. Putin's vision is tied to history, reviving Russia's past, projecting strength into the future. He's not just playing for today, he's constructing a legacy narrative. Lesson. Think beyond your term, your title, your era. Legacy isn't what you leave behind, it's what you set in motion. Final reflection. The gray zone of power. Putin's journey sits in the gray zone, where strategy meets ethics, dominance meets duty, and nationalism meets personal ambition. He is a mirror to the modern world, part villain, part visionary, wholly strategic. What can we learn from him? That clarity of intent can override chaos. That calculated risks often outperform loud ambition. That discipline, detachment, and design are the pillars of lasting influence. Whether you're leading a team, building an empire, managing a crisis, or navigating a global chessboard, the Putin code isn't about becoming like him. It's about extracting the timeless truths from his playbook to refine your own. In the end, it's not about power for power's sake. It's about being strategic enough to wield power with purpose, and wise enough to know when not to use it.